Kaladesh, the 72nd expansion for Magic the Gathering, came out on September 30, 2016, and brought with it not only 264 cards, but also a new plane, technically speaking, and a new chapter in the collectible card game's Gatewatch story. This is actually the second time Magic players had seen the plane of Kaladesh, which made its debut as one of the many locations seen in the 2015 core set Magic Origins.
So we made a set called Magic Origins that showed the origin story of the first 5 planeswalkers in the Gatewatch. One of them was Chandra, and we had never gone to Chandra's home world before, and so we had to make a world to show where she was from. And we've been talking about doing like a steampunk-inspired world, so we decided that would be Chandra's world. So as we started doing a little bit of world building, we realized there was something really cool there, and we actually said, okay, we're going to visit there, and we put it on the schedule for a couple years later.
As for some of the details of what went on in the story of Kaladesh, we have a story summary for you. It's been roughly 3 months since the events on Innistrad that concluded with the Eldrazi Titan, Emrakul, sealing herself away in the plane's Silver Moon. The members of the Gatewatch, Gideon, Jace, Nissa, Chandra, and Liliana, have made Jace's home on Ravnica their de facto base of operations, as another planeswalker, Tamiyo, has been spreading word across the multiverse of the team and their willingness to assist with interplanar threats. This gets the attention of a Vidalcan planeswalker named Dovin Baan, who pays the Gatewatch a visit, and recruits them to act as a security detail of sorts for the upcoming Inventors Fair on his home plane of Kaladesh that is being put on by the plane's consulate. Baan, as it turns out, has intel that a renegade faction is planning on crashing the fair, and he's hoping they can keep that from happening. Gideon and Jace aren't sure how to respond to such a seemingly small request. Nissa, in her own polite way, explains to Baan that the Gatewatch is not hired event security. Liliana explained that the team exists to take on plane-spanning threats. As for Chandra, though, she storms off upon hearing the words Kaladesh and Consulate in the same sentence. In short, Baan's request was denied. As a friendly gesture, though, Gideon invited the Vidalcan planeswalker to stay for dinner. During the meal, the group noticed that both Liliana and Chandra are absent. Baan, upon hearing Chandra's name, decided to inform the rest of the Gatewatch about her, her family, and their history on Kaladesh as, when she was a young girl, Chandra used to smuggle ether for her parents, Pia and Kiran, as well as their inventor friends. Furthermore, the Pyromancer's talents as a mage marked her as an undesirable among the consulate. At some point, while the family was in hiding in a small village outside of the main city of Girapur, they were hunted down by Baral, the consulate's chief of compliance. Chandra's father, in the end, was slain, and the only trace left of her mother was a charred shawl. Chandra herself was taken back to the capital for sentencing, but disappeared in a violent pillar of flame mere moments before her execution. Unbeknownst to the dinner party, Liliana had talked with Chandra in private at some point before the meal, convincing her to return to Kaladesh, for old time's sake. The rest of the Gatewatch quickly figure out on their own that that's probably exactly what Chandra did. While Jace and Gideon opt to stay behind, Nissa volunteers to join Baan and travels to Kaladesh to catch up with the Pyromancer. On Kaladesh, Chandra is seeking out the leaders of the renegade group that Baan had mentioned earlier while on Ravnica. She's hoping she can support their efforts against the consulate as revenge for what happened to her parents. Liliana, whom had accompanied Chandra, tried to convince her just to enjoy the fair and blow off some steam, but that idea went nowhere, especially after the pair noticed a shady-looking robed person making his way through the crowd. They followed him, only to recognize him as Tezzeret, a planeswalker, former head of a Ravnican crime syndicate, and known agent of the power-hungry dragon planeswalker Nicol Bolas. As it turns out, Tezzeret, whom himself had a knack for artifice, is the head judge of the Inventors Fair, and has been tracking down the leader of the Renegades. And his investigations have led him to believe that the person whom he's looking for is none other than Pia Nalaar, Chandra's mother. It seems she survived the ambush that killed Kiran and found Chandra apprehended all those years ago. In the years since, and with both her husband and daughter gone, Pia had dedicated her life to fighting the consulate and had been gathering others to do the same. And now she was standing right there before them. It's during this revelation that Bon and Nissa arrive along with a number of Ghirapur peacemakers. The peacemakers form a wall separating the Gatewatch members from Tezzeret, Bon, and Pia. In a fury and filled with emotion, Chandra attacked. Bon instructed the peacemakers to arrest the pyromancer. Not wanting to see her daughter once again in consulate hands, Pia opts to turn herself in, formally saying that she is the renegade leader. In the confusion, Liliana called for her trio to flee the scene, much to Chandra's dismay. Once away safely, Liliana travels back to Ravnica to inform Jace about Tezzeret's presence on Kaladesh. As for Nissa and Chandra, they're not quite sure what to do next, but Chandra feels the need to find a way to rescue her mother now that she knows she's alive. As luck would have it, Chandra was recognized by Ovia Pashiri, an old friend of her parents. Offering to help, Pashiri said that while she does not know where the consulate was going to hold her mother, she knew how Chandra and Nissa could find out for themselves. The trio then pay visit to the house party going on at the place of the ether-born socialite Yahenni. While Yahenni was not able to help very much with information on Pia's arrest, they were able to comfort Nissa about becoming more comfortable in being in such a large city so far away from home. During the party, a member of Ghirapur's law enforcement arrived, saying that he's there to apprehend a criminal who might be hiding out there. Nissa subdued the officer, and Yahenni coerces from him information that Chandra is looking for. Now armed with the information that Pia is being held at the high security Dun prison, under the supervision of Captain Baral himself, Pashiri leads the two planeswalkers to Ghirapur's night market as, rumor has it, the entrance to the prison lay somewhere beneath. At first, their search was fruitless. That is, until Nissa realizes that she's able to feel the flow of ether in the pipes beneath the street, similar to how she can sense mono ley lines. Using the ether as a guide of sorts, the trio locates the prison's entrance. Once inside, they find a network of underground tunnels. Still using the ether as their navigation tool, Nissa thinks she can find out where in the prison Pia is being held. Once they get to where they think she might be, though, it's not Pia they find, but Baral. He had been expecting them. They tried to make an escape and Chandra flared up her magic. Unbeknownst to them, though, is that Baral, hypocritically, is a mage himself and specializes in counter magic. He easily subdues the two planeswalkers, then locks all three of them into an airtight cell that is slowly filling with poison. While Chandra and Nissa could have easily planeswalked away from there, Chandra refused to leave Pashiri there to die, and Nissa refused to leave Chandra. Help would come, however, as the Leonin planeswalker, Ajani Goldmane, quite literally burst onto the scene after Baral had left the trio for dead in the prison. Word travels fast in Kaladesh, and Ajani had been on the plane tracking Tezzeret and assisting the renegades. Once he learned that Pashiri, whom herself was with the renegades, had been taken captive, he went out to locate and rescue her. Using his healing powers, Ajani expelled the poison from the trio's lungs, and the four of them escaped doomed prison. Once out, they found it surprisingly easy to find out where Pia is, as, during the time they were in their prison cell, a duel was set up between Pia and Tezzeret as the big finale for the Inventors' Fair, and advertisements were suddenly all over Ghirapur. Not only was this duel supposed to symbolize the consulate defeating the renegades by taking out Pia, their supposed leader, but Tezzeret was personally hoping that, in using Pia as bait, he would be able to coax Chandra out into the open. The plan, Tezzeret's part of it at least, worked, though not quite how he had envisioned it, as it wasn't just Chandra who showed up, but a group of planeswalkers, including Nissa and Ajani. Tezzeret quickly found himself outmatched and fled the area. And, at long last, Chandra is reunited with her mother. In the meantime, the consulate puts into motion the next steps of their grand scheme, confiscating all of the inventions being shown at the Inventors' Fair, as well as kidnapping the fair competition's finalists. Sahili Rai, another planeswalker native to Kaladesh, catches up with Ajani at the arena and fills him in on what's going on across the fair. Johnny deduces that Tezzeret is involved, and is probably looking to construct something based upon the various inventions on exhibit. Bond, finding Tezzeret's methods to be, at best, sloppy and overproduced, tried his best to maintain order and prevent riots from erupting both inside the fairground and out. As for Tezzeret, he is safely in the consulate spire. He informed Bond that so long as he's able to keep the peace, he can oversee all of the confiscated inventions. All of them except for one. A matter teleporter of sorts made by the artificer and friend of Sahili, Rashmi, that Tezzeret wanted for himself. Bond, liking the terms set before him by Tezzeret, goes full bore on his crackdown on the streets of Europur, which leaves Tezzeret, finally, free to work towards his real goal, and that of his master, Nicol Bolas. And that's where we'll leave the story of Kaladesh, as, after that, it goes into the next chapter, the story of Aether Revolt. As for the Kaladesh set itself, design was co-led by Mark Rosewater and Sean Main. Development was co-led by Eric Lauer and Ian Duke. Jeremy Jarvis headed up art direction. It was sold in traditional booster packs, a bundle which replaced the fat packs of previous sets but were basically the same thing, a deck builder's toolkit designed for novice players, a booster battle pack containing 2 2016 welcome decks as well as a pair of Kaladesh booster packs, and a gift box. The set also introduced Planeswalker decks, which replaced intro packs. Planeswalker decks were pre-constructed decks that are playable right out of the box, and feature a foil deck-exclusive Planeswalker card that ties into the main set. For Kaladesh, those would be the cards Chandra Pyrogenius and Nissa, Nature's Artisan. Kaladesh also removes something from the game of Magic in the ligature for the Latin diphthong A. Despite it being used on Magic cards since 1994's Legends, Wizards of the Coast decided to cease using it as, according to Wizards media person Blake Rasmussen, the ligature caused more issues than it was worth, especially in non-English translations. And, since Kaladesh featured so much ether, it would have become quite the headache. Kaladesh also featured a bonus sheet of sorts called Kaladesh Inventions. Similar to the Zendikar Expeditions 2 blocks before it, Inventions are premium foil cards that feature a special Kaladesh card frame. Kaladesh features 30 of these cards, and all 30 of these artifacts are from across Magic's history, including new cards like Combustible Gearhulk, modern era cards such as Sword of Fire and Ice, and cards from way back like Monovault.
The idea of Kaladesh was always, it is a world of invention, it's a world of creativity, and it's a world where, like the first time we visited, there was a fair that showed all the cool things that the inventors were doing. But anyway, we really leaned into that. And it's a fun set that just, I don't know, it has a soft spot in my heart. I think it's a really cool set.
Flavor-wise, Kaladesh, both the set and the plane, has a very heavy focus on technology and innovation. It also takes heavy cues from Indian culture, along with a sort of steampunk aesthetic.
Not only was there inspired by the genre of steampunk, but we also used a lot of Indian culture as a backdrop for it. And so it was a mix of sort of some genre and some real world cultural influence, and so we mixed those together.
In terms of themes and mechanics, Kaladesh introduces a new artifact subtype, vehicles, along with a new keyword ability to go along with them in Crew. With Crew, a player must tap a number of creatures with power equal to or greater than a vehicle's crew cost. When that happens, that vehicle becomes an artifact creature until end of turn.
Vehicles were something we had talked about doing forever, like the idea of a thing you could get in and you could drive or something. And I think when we got there, we're like, look, this is our steampunk world. Like, if we're ever going to do vehicles, this is the place we should do it. And so we spent a lot of time and energy figuring out how to make them work. The trick to it was that they weren't creatures initially, they were just artifacts. And that when you sort of got someone to drive them or crew them, then they would turn on and become creatures for the turn. And that we spent a lot of time with it. The big innovation that we finally got on it was originally when you crewed, the crew number meant the number of creatures you had to tap. And eventually we found it was a much better mechanic if the crew number was the amount of power you have to tap.
Another new mechanic introduced with the set is Fabricate.
Fabricate came about because we were trying to fill a hole in the set, and we were in a meeting, and I was walking us through all the things that we needed to fill, and in the meeting, as I pieced it together, I'm like, well, I guess it could be this, and I literally just like made it in the meeting. And we did a lot of fine tuning after that, but like the core idea was just me spitballing in a meeting trying to solve a problem. So Fabricate, by the way, is the idea you have a choice. That you can either get +1/+1 counters or you can get 1/1 tokens. And so we thought it was really cool that we like choice mechanics, like what do you want? They're tricky to design, they're not that, getting the right cost so that both choices make sense is not easy to do. The tokens usually are stronger than the +1/+1 counters, so we had to add abilities that gave value for having higher power, trample or lifelink, stuff like that. But anyway, it turned out to be a real fun mechanic, and I'm happy we made it.
And finally, there's Energy. Energy represents the ether that is an integral part of Kaladesh's ecosystem, and what powers many of the innovative devices found on the plane.
Energy was a mechanic that I originally had made for original Mirrodin. I had too many mechanics, I had to take something out. Energy was the thing that was easiest to remove, that was less connected to other things. I had it in my back pocket, I've been looking for a place to use Energy, and Kaladesh 13 years later was the place that we were able to use it. I like Energy, I think it's a really cool thing. I like alternative resources. We might not have done the best play balance on the first time through, but we recently brought Energy back. It was in the Fallout decks, it was in Modern Horizons 3, and so it is a fun resource. It is something we plan to revisit. I'm glad that we finally got it to give it its premiere in original Kaladesh.
There was also supposed to be one other new mechanic in Kaladesh.
We made a mechanic we called Inventions, and the idea was they didn't go in your deck, but you could have cards that could go fetch an invention. And the idea was they were small artifacts I guess you could play them in your deck, but you could go fetch them from outside your deck. We didn't end up using it because there was too much going on. Energy was really complicated, and basically the development team at the time said, you can have Energy or you can have Inventions, and we chose Energy because Energy was the core of the set. In Strixhaven, Lesson Learned basically was a reskinned version of Inventions. It did it with instant sorceries rather than artifacts, but it directly borrowed from Inventions.
The set features 6 cycles. Most notable among them are Gearhulks, 5 mythic rare colored artifacts that each have a keyword ability as well as an enter the battlefield effect. Puzzle Knots, at common, which each have an enter the battlefield ability that can be triggered a second time by paying a cost and sacrificing the artifact. And enemy colored fast lands, finishing the cycle of allied colored fast lands that were introduced way back in Scars of Mirrodin. Kaladesh also features a triplet cycle in the artifact's Fabrication module, Animation module, and Decoction module. Each artifact has an ability that leads to the next and can loop together to make one complete process. Even the flavor text flows from one card to the next, as does the art, which combines to make one continuous piece of artwork between the 3 cards. And speaking of cards, Kaladesh has a handful that are worth a mention, including Aetherflux Reservoir, a popular card still used today in Commander in life gain decks that has the ability to knock opponents out of the game in one fell swoop. Aetherworks Marvel, a key card in the very powerful Marvel deck during Standard at the time that can fire off as early as turn 4, often to win the game. The card wound up being banned in the format. Authority of the Consoles, which is a very good turn 1 spell that can really throw off aggressive decks. Beaumont Courier, an aggressive artifact creature that can refill one's hand if needed. The card saw a good amount of play in various red deck win strategies in Standard and Pioneer. Chandra, Torch of Defiance, considered, still today, as one of the most powerful Planeswalker cards ever printed. It saw heavy play in Standard at the time and still sees play across a variety of formats. Inventor's Fair, a landed rare with a nice upside for artifact decks. Lost Legacy, a card that sees sideboard play as a way to dismantle combo decks. Panharmonicon, a favorite card of Mark Rosewalder, and the first card printed that doubles triggered abilities when they occur. Paradoxical Outcome, a combo piece seen in Legacy and Vintage Paradoxical Storm decks. Saheeli Rai, a Planeswalker card that became part of a vicious combo when the next set Aether Revolt came out, thanks to the card Felidar Guardian. Sky Sovereign, console flagship, which saw a good amount of play in Standard and is still seen in competitive decks today from time to time. Smuggler's Copter, an undercosted artifact vehicle that would find itself banned in Standard as well as preemptively banned in Pioneer when that format was introduced in 2019. In 2023, the Copter was unbanned in Pioneer. And Torrential Gearhulk, a win condition card that saw a good amount of play in Standard and still does in Pioneer. In terms of promotional cards, Kaladesh's pre-release promo or date-stamped foils, and could be of any rare or mythic rare in the set. Saheeli's Artistry is the set's launch promo. The set's game day participation promo is Essence Extraction, with Cultivator of Blades being the set's game day top 8 promo. Skyship Stalker is the set's buy box promo. Now, in getting back to the set Kaladesh as a whole,
one of the things I really loved about Kaladesh is we have a lot of worlds that are all about sort of conflict and like horrible things are going on, and I loved that Kaladesh, when we first went to it, was much more about it was a celebration. It was kind of a happy place, and that it was a set that really leaned into like Johnny Genist qualities, and that was a lot of fun for me. It was an artifact set, so we got to make a lot of artifacts. But like Penharmicon, I gave out homework one time. I said, okay, I want to make artifacts that are novel and unique, and you see them, you go, ooh, I didn't know you could do that. And one of the ones I made was Panharmonicon, and so that's going on to be like a staple that shows up in a lot of different places.
So what are your thoughts on Kaladesh? Love it or hate it, let us know what you think in the comments. Also, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Plus, we have a tip jar on Patreon if you'd like to support the channel that way. Thank you very much.